Hey y'all, we're so thrilled that you're here to talk with us at this roundtable discussion about our Upstate Women's Conference. I'm so glad y'all joined me today.
Thank you.
Welcome. Will y'all just take a minute and introduce yourselves, starting with you, Carrie?
Oldest first, right? Yeah. I'm Carrie Epton. My husband Josh is the associate worship pastor at Church at the Mill Central Campus. We have 3 kids, 17, 16, and 10. One about to graduate. That's interesting. I also work a full-time job in Spartanburg District 4 as an administrative assistant. I'm also a counselor in a biblical counseling ministry at Church at the Mill.
I'm Rachel Cantrell. I have a husband, Devin, and I have 2 little ones, a 2-year-old Baylor and a 5-month-old Letty. I work at Church at the Mill. I'm our communications director. Lots of other little tasks in between, but
I'm Jean Tollison, and I'm the preschool director at Church at the Mill. My husband and I, Clint, we have 3 girls. We have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
They are my nieces, and they are beautiful and precious, and I just love them. I have 2 boys, and so they were all the girly things forever because I had 2 boys, and then I had a little girl. So I'm a mom to 2 boys and a little girl. She just turned 1. My name's Aubrey Anderson, and I just love Church at the Mill, but I don't work there. And so I serve in different capacities, and I'm an interior designer as well, but mostly at home with my children. Today we're going to talk about balancing life, but before we go there, I just want to mention that our conference is coming up, and the title of it is Before All Things. We've seen that women in our society are just dealing with stress and anxiety and worry and fear, and whether it comes from social media or discussions that they have or whatever, I think that it's become a hard thing. And so we wanted to put this conference on as an encouragement to women to really learn to put Jesus before all things, that Jesus is what we filter our entire lives through, that it doesn't just fit in. I know we're stressed, and sometimes it's like, oh, another checkbox, can I do it? But that's not what we're called to. We're called to put him before all things. And so that's what we're discussing today, is balancing life. And whether you're a working mom or a stay-at-home mom or a woman in the workforce that isn't a mom, life is hard to juggle, and I don't know if y'all agree, but I don't really think there is a way to balance life. I think that, Carrie, you were saying earlier that it's a season, and it's a ebb and flow. So will you just share with me a little bit about how you do that? How do you juggle it all?
I don't know there is such a thing as balance. I may be wrong, but I've always looked at, my dad passed away about a year ago, and one of the things he always said was, the sooner that you accept the season that God has you in and walk straight into that season and leave the other one behind, the more glory God gets and the more good and the better off you are. So I've really tried to reorient my thinking to that it's not really about balance. It's about, okay, God, this is the season you have me in. You are sovereign, and I trust you. So I'm going to settle into the season. We are to love the Lord God with all our heart, soul, and mind. That is Jesus said that is our first priority. And then out of the overflow of that, we love other people. And when we order our steps in that way, and live within the season that God and his sovereignty has put you in, I firmly believe he gets the most glory, and it is for the most good for you. So I don't know if that makes sense.
yeah, that's good.
I love that.
Yeah.
For sure.
So powerful. Yeah. Is there do you have like a mantra or something you say to yourself, or a way that you remind yourself? Like, how do you jerk yourself back into perspective when you start to feel the stress on top of you?
Y'all want to answer that?
That's good. Yeah. I mean, I think, to Carrie's point, a season that you're in, I think sometimes we feel like we have to do it all.
Yeah.
I have to be the small group leader. I have to make sure my kids go to, their extracurricular activities. I have to make sure that at work I'm performing at 100%. Have to make sure that my husband is getting, 100%. And he's actually supposed to be before all those other things. And then, you know, most importantly, your quiet time and your time with the Lord. And so I think, you know, depending on what season you're in is how you really prioritize those things. And you can't do all of it at 100% at all times. I think having that priority of, okay, these are the two things I can focus on and I can do really well in, and that's what's going to be healthiest for me as a believer and for my family. And so I think identifying what that is and just staying in a short lane, you know, rather than stretching yourself in 10 different lanes.
Right.
You could be more successful, but more importantly, glorifying God and being, you know, who you are and who your worth is in Him when you have all things on your plate, but limiting that for the season that you're in.
Right. Jean, I watch you balance it all. And so will you share like how you do it? Because you do it beautifully.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't feel like I do. To be honest, I think it's just priorities and your perspective on the tasks that are set before you and prioritizing what has to be done and what needs to be done and what wants to be done. And I think that the posture of your heart towards those things, making sure that your priorities are not just your priorities in your household or as your wife, you know, jobs for that, or your duties as a mom, or your duties as from work, but making sure that the balance of that is prioritizing where you feel like God's called you to be. And when you feel like you're doing the Lord's will, all of the other things seem to seamlessly mesh together. Yeah. And I don't know how to explain that as much as like through experiencing that in the last couple of years, has it been like such a huge blessing to see how God's grace and His plan for my life is so much more than I could have expected. And my thoughts of what I pictured my life being in this year for my family is completely different. But because of a choice of obedience in working at the church, even though it is part-time, and trying to balance those two things is really tricky. I feel like you feel like the mom guilt of like, okay, if I'm at the church or if I'm at work or doing whatever, I'm not with my kids, so you can feel guilt for that. But then you also, if you're with your kids, you feel guilt that you're not doing something else. And you can always, I feel like Satan, that's like one of his biggest tactics for, you know, especially for moms, is just trying to make you feel guilty for not being 100% doing something else, whatever that task may be. But I think just fighting that and knowing that He didn't create us to do it all. And I think that that's so freeing. When you start to really understand that God created us to work with Him and for Him, and that's all He's asked us to do is to rely on Him.
I cannot do it all. Like, just cannot. And you have to reach a place. Like, I feel like I had to reach a place where I was like, nope, can't do it all. What are my lines? Like, what are my boundary lines? I was not good at boundaries. I was a yes girl, and I said yes to everything. And I do see that in like walking with the Lord and really starting my day with Him and just really asking Him to give me His will and His wisdom and His words. It has helped me to be able to say no. Right. Because I really struggled to say no before.
And I think saying no to some things is actually saying yes to other things, you know? And so I think when you have that perspective of saying, just because I'm saying no, it could be a good thing. But you're also saying, by saying no to that, you're saying yes to your family or yes to another opportunity. So I think just having that perspective, because once again, like the guilt can set in for trying to feel like you're not doing a good job at doing it. But if you're actually saying, no, I'm not going to stretch myself so thin so I can give 110% to that, I think it's just all in how, you know, you're kind of viewing what you're putting your energy into.
Right. Yeah. And so guilt, we've kind of like highlighted that word a couple of times now. How would you like define what that feels like? And then from there, how do you attack that? Like, Satan, back up. How do you do that, Carrie?
Oh gosh. That's changed for me over the years. And I'm not trying to be super spiritual. I kind of have let go of guilt. a little bit. I trust God's sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that means saying no to things. And I've just let go of the guilt. Actually, one of the ladies in the counseling ministry with me kind of high-fived me the other night because I said no. And I felt no guilt about it because I want to do everything with excellence because we serve such a good and kind God. And He's given me so many opportunities to do things in His name, for His glory. And I've watched it be for the betterment of my family. So I've learned to limit myself to the things that I can do with excellence, that I can give 100% to. And sometimes that just means saying no and not giving the guilt an opportunity because I'm trusting God's sovereignty in the moment that I'm in, and the yes that I said or the no that I gave.
So it is so good. It's so good. So when you like reach a point that you've said too many yeses and you realize, like, what do I do? Who do you lean on? Like, who's someone in your life that you lean on and you can call on? Like, how do you handle the point when it's too much?
I would say for me, I'm constantly surrounded around solid Christian women working in ministry, you know, and I feel like specifically my mother-in-law, she's in adult ministries and over biblical counseling. And so she always has that wisdom to say, okay, here's the truth, and here's guilt, Satan, the things that are surrounding around it. Just stick to the word. And here's what it says. You know, this is the scripture. And so I think having that is important, but also just other women of different generations. You know, I think it's always good to get more than one opinion, you know, having someone who is obviously biblically sound, but maybe somebody close to your age, maybe somebody who's walked that season in your life, you know, a Carrie who has older kids than I do, you know, she's been there, she's walked it, and maybe, you know, a Jean or is a little bit, you know, aligned with me, but also, you know, a little bit ahead of me in her life. And so I feel like just having multiple, you know, multiple people to talk to, I think it's also has been beneficial for me when it comes to getting advice and spiritual wisdom.
Unfortunately for me, my husband has also been through biblical counseling training. So even yesterday, I called and was venting about something because he's my sounding board. I feel very safe with him, and he's fostered that, and I'm so appreciative of that. So I called, I'm venting, and he's throwing back all of my stuff at me that I tell other people all the time. And it was enough to, like, I was getting a little bit defensive, and he said, I love you, babe. You're getting a little defensive. You know this is truth. What does truth say? And so, you know, so he's kind of, you know, and he loves it. We can even rub it in my face. That this is what you tell me all the time. And I don't like it either, but I love you, and I'm telling you truth. So he's great for that for me.
Yeah, and I think constantly, like, evaluating. I think I would say it's just, like, I'm mostly stay-at-home mom as far as my time, and I think I would say I don't have as many, like, coworkers that I'm surrounded by as often. I see moms here and there, but I would say that my person per se is definitely my husband. But I think that it's just constantly evaluating our family and the season of life that we're in, and things that we can do when we do feel that stress or that kind of the guilt or the anxiousness of, like, there's so much going on, that I think that we can kind of evaluate our status together. Like, okay, how can we do less of this, or be, you know, put our energy into something else, and just kind of making sure that we're on the same page, and he knows my heart through and through, to helping me understand the areas of my life where he might see, just like you're saying, he call you out in a great way, though. You know, you need somebody that, you know, but wants the best for you. And I think too, just like you were saying, people that are in the same stage of life with you, but also have walked the road before, to give you some of the, hey, I've tried that, it doesn't work. Or, hey, this really worked well for me, and just some helpful tips and advice to kind of make things, make your path of your adventure through life a little bit easier for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to foster like an honest, like just hearing y'all talk about that, like a honest, true relationship with your spouse so that you can say those things.
Yeah.
Like, someone has to say it.
Yeah. It's not always been that way. That's 2 decades of us. We said it took us the first decade to learn how to fight well and honor God and love each other well in it. And we've been working really hard at that since then.
Yeah.
So that's not an automatic. So I don't want anybody to think
Right.
that's a,
Right.
I mean,
Well,
that's
I
a lot
didn't
of
say
work.
my husband, so you know. but I mean, I do love my husband. He is my soundboard, but he's also defensive for me.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think sometimes he tries to tells me what I want to hear, or he tries to defend me and make sure that I'm doing what I need to do selfishly sometimes, you know, because he loves me.
Right.
But there are, of course, times where he leads me, but I think
He'll get there.
you know. Also,
get there.
my mother-in-law.
So in many like parts of the world, or today still, but also used to be here, people lived in communities and like helped each other and served each other. And like, I mean, it wasn't just like, hey, I need some salt and butter from across the street. Like, I mean, they really supported one another. And I feel like we've gotten away from that.
Right.
And it's like, I don't know if it's pride. Like, what do y'all think it's pride that we are, I can do it. I can do this. I don't need help. And is it stemming from what?
Yeah.
Social media? From, I don't know, celebrityism? Is that a
Yeah.
word? I don't know. Like, what is it that is making us feel like I can do it and I don't need your help?
I feel like social media creates a false sense of community,
Yeah.
that it's not real.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing. I have been so blessed. Most of the people who know us laugh that I live on a compound. I live on 30 acres of land with my entire family. Not all in one house. Let's clarify. But we're all, you know, have our own homes. But we kind of have built-in community. So I kind of have a different sense, and I've always grown up with this is so important. Like it's so important. And I see other people who wish they had what we had.
Right.
But I'm also going through a season, using that word a lot, of I'm at both campuses at Church at the Mill. Like I'm in between Central and Woodruff with my kids where, you know, we live and go to school. And I have felt a little bit of sense lately, and this is one thing Josh and I have been talking about, is a sense of feeling like, we laugh, that we're like Kenny and Dolly, islands in the stream, kind of in between two campuses, and trying to figure out how that new season and new community works, and really landing in a good place. But I think God in His sovereignty has taught me how important community is right now, because I feel a little bit isolated at times, trying to figure out where to land. So it's so important. Community is a huge thing. And when my dad died a year ago, like, I don't want to cry. I mean, I learned the beauty of how God laid out the church to be. It's family, and they're your people. And I mean, I pulled into their house. He had been gone maybe an hour, and Jamie, one of our mutual friends, pulled up with toilet paper and paper towels and plates and stuff we didn't even have in our mind that we were going to need over the next coming weeks with all the people in and out of the house. And you don't think about those things until all of a sudden life hits you really fast and hard. And these people just show up because they love God and they love you and they're your people. So I think we've just lost the love for that because we're not faced with that very often. And again, I feel like social media has created a false sense of community in that, and kind of fostered it a little bit. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does.
Talked a lot.
No, it does. I mean, I think to me it's just the world is changing so much and around us, and even in just here in Spartanburg, you know, from when I was in high school, you know, versus when now being a mom, just how much time has changed in such a short period of time. I mean, just the culture and what people are believing in, and the Christianity, how that's even, people are trying to change that, you know. I mean, it's incredible how much that has changed. But to your point, finding that community and finding a community that loves the Lord, that truthfully loves the Lord, they're going to love you how they love the Lord. But
yeah. I think it's like in our DNA as women to want to do it all. But also, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but like if there's a pile of laundry there, I mean, nobody's going to pick it up and do it, you know, unless I ask for help to do it, or it's kind of just the way it goes. As women, like, it's kind of our responsibility, and it doesn't mean our husbands don't help, but it's in us to take care of dinner and make sure the kids have clothes that fit and that they have soccer cleats that for season coming up, or the laundry's done, whatever. And so how do you filter that through the lens of Jesus, like that pressure to make sure that all the things are done? Because those are things you can't get away from. Your kids still need clothes. The laundry has to be done. Like, we have to eat.
Yeah. It's so funny because I always tell my husband is like, we are opposite when it comes to that stuff. He's like OCD. Like, if there's one dish in the sink, we need to get it done. Like, we have got to get to it. Like, why is it sitting in the sink still? And I'm like, there's literally tomorrow to get this done. Like, this does not
Saturday.
Yeah, like, it's perfectly fine. But I think just telling yourself, like, is it the end of the world? Like, is it the end of the world if you do not get these two things done?
No.
Like,
the answer is no.
Yes, it will be there tomorrow. And so I think just having that mentality, like, is it the end of the world? Like, I think sometimes we think, like, it has to be perfect. It has to be done. It has to be, like, here's the checklist, here's the laundry, but it's okay. If we have, our bellies are full and we got through the day and kids are in bed, it's okay to go to sleep. You know, like, it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, Jean talked about priorities.
Yeah, and I think just releasing that from you, because of course Satan wants to bog you down with one more thing to add to your list, or one more pressure to feel like you either did or didn't do well today, you know, for the day. But I think, you know, like, a hot topic word is like the mom boss kind of thing. And like, I understand, I think, what the concept is, but at the same time, it puts this persona on moms that the boss does it all. So what does that reflect on our brains is that we have to do it all. And that's not true. And I think, you know, something that my husband once again called me out, and he said, I want to help, but I need you to let me know how I can help you. And it's just like a breath of fresh air. Like, I mean, we're doing this. He's like, we're doing this together. Let me help. And so I'm like, okay. And I think that from that point, it kind of was a tipping point for us, and just being able to communicate that and having that open line of communication of saying, hey, I really need your help doing this. And it's like, at first I had a really hard time asking for help. That's my personality in general. I'm really not good at asking for help. But I feel like that's also something the Lord is teaching me, that in my job, and in life, as my kids get older and we're doing more and more things, we're going to this place and this place and this place. Just because I can't be 4 places at once and pick everybody up at the same time does not mean that I'm not a good mom. It literally means that if we're going to commit to doing these things, it's okay to have help. And if we can't have the help, then we maybe can't commit. But also just an understanding the role that we have as a wife and as a mom and as a couple, that, you know, God's created marriage that way, and it's a perfect design. And I think it also reminds you, like, I know God's sitting there saying, I want to help, let me help, you know, so many times. And it's like, no, we got it. But it's like, why would we not let him help by opening our hearts to hearing how he wants to help us emotionally, you know, and all the things. And I think that it just kind of goes back to our priorities of, what are we starting our day with? Are we starting our time in the Word? Are we able to structure our day in a way that makes time for the Lord, makes time for our family and our job, and just kind of lining up those priorities? And just when that is out of line, that's when we typically feel the most overwhelmed. And I've been on both sides of that, when my quiet time was not as consistent, and my overwhelmedness definitely aligns with that. And, you know, so many times I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to stop not doing my quiet time. And then, you know, life happens and you like kind of miss a day here or whatever. And then it's like, okay, but I just think that that's how the Lord reminds you, like, I promise you, I'm going to take care of you. Read what I've got to say, and let's get the day started. You know.
Well, and I think it's funny, like, how different each of us even are on this couch. You know, like, I'm not your typical housewife where everything is perfect and I'm making dinner. Like I'm going to work, I'm picking up my child from therapy, and then I'm going to Chick-fil-A and we're eating chicken nuggets and large fry and a sweet tea.
Yeah.
So, and I think just being okay with that.
Yeah.
Like being okay with I'm not this persona that Jean is. I'm not this person that Carrie is.
Right.
I'm not Aubrey. Like we're all totally different.
Right.
But making sure your priorities
Right.
are Christ-centered.
I cut grass. We found our lane. We found our lane. He is a
Right.
great cook. I love to cook grass because I do it better than he does. That's recorded. But it's release for me.
Right.
So we've found our lanes and
Yeah.
settled in. It's okay.
Yep.
You know, we found our lanes. And I do my quiet time at night because that's when I know I'm most attentive and have the most time to sit. But I discipline myself. I do not go to bed. There are times I'm sitting up at midnight and my accountability people that I send a picture of it to say I did it,
Waiting.
they get it the next morning if it's
That's
midnight
right.
and I'm doing it. So offer yourself lots of grace.
Yeah.
Lots of grace. It's about motive and it's about growing closer to the Lord because your word is who God is. And that's what it's more about than when you do it. And DJ's probably cringing because I know he's a morning person, but I do mine at night because that's when I know I can be intentional and spend the time. And my kids know it. They'll come in and won't say a word. They'll lay in the bed or the dog. She doesn't even bother me because they
How
know.
sweet is that? You know, that your kids know that that's your time with the Lord.
Yeah, but it's annoying because they'll lay there and wait for me to go. They need
Like,
me.
what
But,
if you-
yeah.
It's so sweet. And it's just so important. Like, that is why we titled this conference Before All Things, because our time with him has to come before all things. I think he gives you your time back. I think there have been times in my life where I was like, I really can't do it today. And I was like, nope, I'm doing it. And I feel like the Lord gave me the time back later. Y'all, thank you so much for joining me today to just talk through this subject. Please join us next week for a sweet conversation between Dr. Vanessa Allen and Pastor DJ from Church at the Mill.